everyone, and welcome to another episode of our Caregiver series. Here today with us, we have Dimitra, and to start, I'll pass it over to her to introduce herself.
Hi guys, I'm Dimitra. I am 37, going to be 37 years old. I guess I'm considered a sandwich generation caregiver. I have a set of twins who have what you call ASMD, which is a genetic disease that just so happened they fall on a 25% chance of getting it between my husband's genes and my genes together. And my non-identical twins ended up falling both in that 25% chance. So what it is their body doesn't dispose of lipids, and so it builds up and it can affect their spleen and their liver, and eventually it goes into their blood system, and also can affect their lungs, and also eventually affect them neurologically. There is not a cure, but we just got accepted in a drug trial through the FDA. Is going to be approved through the FDA soon, hopefully. We're just in the last stages, and we're in a compassionate use program is what it's called. And so they will be getting infusions every 2 weeks for that. So this is good news. We're happy about that. I'm also a caregiver to both of my parents who have dementia. My dad has vascular dementia, and my mom has Lewy body dementia. And they were diagnosed close to the same time that our twins were diagnosed. Our twins were diagnosed about 5.5 years ago, and my parents were diagnosed 5 years ago about that. And so we were in the same room at the same time, same doctor, and we got the diagnosis of them having dementia. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for your introduction. I'm really glad to hear about the trial. That's amazing news, and it looks like you have so much on your plate. I'm going to get right into the interview, and we will begin right now. So I just want to know, the first question is how long you've been a caregiver. I guess you kind of went into that already. And to follow up, if you feel comfortable talking about it, can you walk us through the diagnosis experience and what that was like for you and your family? Kind of what emotions were brought up, how you kind of handled that at the very beginning?
Yeah. So for the twins, it started off with our daughter, Anna. So she started exhibiting some GI issues about 6 months old. And so we started digging into that, and it took us about a year to finally get a solid diagnosis. They thought that she had fatty liver disease. And so they decided to go ahead and do a liver biopsy, and that's how they ended up actually truly finding out what she has, which again is what you call, it's actually Niemann-Pick type B, also known as ASMD. So after we found out it was a genetic disease, we went to a genetic specialist and then went on to go ahead and test her twin brother. And so then that's how we found out that he also had it. She is a lot, the level in her condition is a lot different. She's a lot more progressed than he is. Her symptoms are a lot more visible for sure. Although it seems like he's starting to progress to her level now. So each person is a little bit different when it comes to it. And then for my parents, I actually have a background in working with dementia care. And so I kind of started picking up on things with my mom early on in her probably her late 60s. And that's when I started attending doctor's appointments with her and just listening in at first and just noticing a lot of changes starting to happen with her. And so we ended up having to switch to a different neurologist. And because we weren't getting the answers that I knew was there. I knew there was something there, right? So we got a second opinion, and sure enough, and I saw things were changing with my dad as well in the same time. And so I took them both into the same neurologist. And so we did the testing at the same time. And yep, sure enough, mom was actually diagnosed originally with cervical dystonia with essential tremors, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. And so that is also commonly, Lewy body is also commonly misdiagnosed because of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow, it sounds like you have so much to handle. I guess my second question will lead right into it. Can you describe kind of what a regular day of a caregiving routine would look like for you and how you kind of go about handling all of the different aspects of caregiving?
A mess. Honestly, you get into a rhythm and then all of a sudden things just change, right? And you constantly are feeling like you're having to just reevaluate situations and just reassess and change things constantly. So especially with the pandemic and everything, it actually kind of worked a little bit in our favor, being able to stay at home, because we were able to kind of focus a little bit more on those specific needs for all of us. And it also kind of helped us figure out like what type of caregiving role we wanted to play. So as mom and dad progressed, we did decide to go ahead and place them into a smaller care home, because that was ultimately safer mentally for us and for them, but also physically.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. And in terms of specific task managing resources that you yourself and your family take advantage of, or any type of advice you could give to someone else who's having trouble kind of handling all of those tasks, is there anything that you would recommend or that has worked for you?
Mental health is a huge part of being able to manage tasks, and being able to stay on top of things. And so I think that is like the number one, is as a caregiver, you absolutely have to take care of your mind and yourself in order to be able to give of yourself. And so that's number one. And then two, like, check out your local hospice care. They have so many resources for dementia care. It's not all just end of life care. There's also another resource of palliative care that is attached with hospice care. So that was my savior when I was spiraling, and that is what pulled me into a better direction and finally searching for help for myself as well.
That's great to hear. Thank you for sharing that, and leads perfectly into the next question that I was going to ask you, which is about self-care. I wanted to ask you what your self-care routine looks like and what kinds of things you would recommend for caregivers for self-care, as well as the importance, like you said, to take care of yourself first.
Yeah, it took me going to the bottom mentally and literally rebuilding myself back up to see things in a different way, to see things in a healthier way for myself, but also for my parents and my kids. So I ended up talking to a therapist. I take medication. I I stay outdoors as much as possible. Music, anything. I think that everyone's kind of a little bit different when it comes to self-soothing them, So gardening and therapy and music is my thing.
Yeah, definitely. All of those are great tips. Thank you so much. Yeah, the importance of self-care is sometimes extremely undervalued. Like if you can't help yourself, how can you then help someone else, right? So thank you for those tips again. So those were the 3 questions that I was going to ask you. I'll pass it over to Kenna, who will continue.
Thanks so much for sharing your story. That's really inspiring. And I wasn't expecting you to also say that you're a caregiver to your children in that way. So a lot of respect goes out to you for that. I wanted to ask you what the biggest lessons you have learned as a caregiver are. Or the biggest lesson, I guess.
Ask for help. But like be direct in what you're asking for. And it's okay to be direct in what you're asking for. It took me a very long time to come to that place, and being okay, because I'm very prideful. But that's the key. Help.
Thanks for sharing that. For sure. I think a lot of people need to hear that as well. And sometimes it can be hard to ask for help, but I think it's so important to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. So this is actually kind of a question that relates to that as well. What support resources would you say or other tools you use to kind of help you through the caregiving process? And is there anything that you would recommend to others as well?
Yeah, social media. As soon as I was like able mentally to like after I rebuilt myself mentally and got in a better place, I got right on to social media for support. Especially during the pandemic, that's the first thing that you go to because we can't physically see each other. But also just as a caregiver, it's not very easy to just leave the house and go physically to a support group, right? So social media, get on your platforms to find your village. That's what I did, and that's what saved me. That's what helped me get my voice as well.
That's great to hear. Yeah, I think online is super helpful, especially during the pandemic, right? Like in person is, it's kind of changed. So I think online support is extremely important. I can definitely agree with that. And then the next question I wanted to ask was, would you be willing to describe your experience with caregiver burnout and what strategy you use when you're experiencing this?
Yeah. So I didn't realize I was burning out until I burnt out completely. And when people say to you, ask for help, or this is going to be hard, you're going to need this or that, listen, because it's true. And your story is different, but is not as different. And listen to the advice that's being given to you.
That's great advice. Thanks so much for sharing that. For sure, I feel like burnout's a really difficult thing, but we appreciate that you're able to share your experience and talk about it because I think it can help a lot of people. And then our last question we wanted to ask is a little bit different. We were just wondering if you see technology playing a role in the caregiving experience, and if you use technology. I guess you kind of mentioned social media, but maybe other technology like apps or anything like that to help you in your caregiving experience.
Yeah, so the Memoryz app, obviously. They're great. I love how we're able to check out on moods and all of that. And I love being able to see insight from other caregivers as well. But as far as like technology, I would look into like things like camera systems are one thing that we really used. before we placed my parents into a care home about 4 months ago, we did have a camera system up in their house so that we could see if they were going to go out the door, or, you know, that was when we decided, okay, it's time for them to be placed in a care home, because my dad was actually going to the door at 2 o'clock in the morning and opening it and just looking outside, but like, and then closing the door. But that was like our cue for, okay, we need to do something different now. And reminder systems, anything reminder systems for dementia or yourself.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. No, that's really great advice. Like, there's so many things that I feel like people can use in their home that are really useful that I feel like people don't usually mention. So thank you for shedding light on that as well. And then the last thing we just kind of wanted to ask if there's anything else you would like to add or say to any other caregivers or anything like that.
That embrace every moment. It goes by really, really fast, and just love and give.
That's a really nice sentiment. Thanks so much for sharing all of that and your experience. We really appreciate it. And I'm sure lots of other caregivers will appreciate it as well. Thanks for tuning into our caregiver interview series, and stay tuned for our next one.